Things are going great. All of a sudden, your boss tells you, safety is your responsibility. Oh no, not another job. Now you're burdened with accident reports, safety training, making sure employees follow safety rules and wear appropriate personal protective equipment when required. Wow, it's enough to make you want to cry. Let's back up a minute. Safety is your responsibility. You're a supervisor. You're responsible for everything your employees do or fail to do. Nothing new. The company safety manager or coordinator isn't responsible for safety. The supervisor is the only person having direct control over employees. Therefore, the supervisor is absolutely responsible and accountable for safety. Let's take a look at exactly what this responsibility means and basically how safety programs should work. First, there are company policies, procedures, and rules relating to employee safety. It's usually found in the safety manual. Supervisors must know these policies and ensure, through training and education, all employees know of these rules, procedures, and policies.
If a company doesn't have any rules and employees aren't properly trained, the supervisor could not be held responsible legally for a safety problem. But would the supervisor be able to lead effectively? If the rules don't exist and if the employees aren't properly trained, a supervisor's responsibility is to work towards that goal with management, to seek an orderly workplace.
Next, the supervisor must ensure employees know and understand they have an individual responsibility for their behavior and actions. It's a condition of employment. Many employees don't always understand or believe safety is an individual responsibility. They understand the need for job rules, but if they cause or contribute to an accident or injury, well, it's no big deal. No, employees are responsible for their individual safety, which means they must follow the rules, work and act safely, and that's as important as all the other jobs they do.
As a supervisor explaining the policies of the company, safety is very important. I wanted you to explain what it is, why it is, and how it is. If you feel you cannot follow our rules and regulations of safety, then don't take the job.
We mentioned training, but didn't explain what specific training is required. We may leave out a few requirements, but let's concentrate on the basics of safety training requirements. First, there's a legal requirement that all employees must be trained in the general hazards to which they may be exposed. This must be done before they begin the job. General hazards may be the type of work they perform, the clothing, footwear, personal protection, the company policy on wearing rings and jewelry, machine safety and guarding, electrical safety, drug and alcohol policy, safe lifting, and many others. This training is usually provided as an employee safety orientation program, provided new employees the first day on the job.
Believe me, the time spent on our orientation is time well spent. You're catching the new worker at a responsive moment, at a time when they're very receptive to training. Take advantage of this opportunity to train them right, to do it the way you want it done in the department. Don't let it slide by. The time spent to correct later will be 3, 4, 5 times as much. The longer you wait, the more time it's going to take to fix anything that doesn't come out the way you want. Remember, if you don't have a proper orientation, what you get is their best effort, but it may not be what you want.
If you don't have such a program now, you're neglecting an important and legal responsibility. Statistics reveal new employees experience the most injuries their first 30 to 90 days on the job. Secondly, in most jurisdictions, if an employee is seriously injured or killed on the job and the employee had not been properly safety trained, the supervisor may be held criminally liable. It's happened in a variety of industries and in several state courts. Supervisors have gone to jail for neglecting to properly train employees in safety procedures.
Well, every employer in California has a legal duty to provide a safe workplace for their employees. That means developing a comprehensive health and safety program, often referred to as an accident prevention plan. We prefer to refer to it as health and safety protection plan. There's several elements that must be included in such a plan, both by law and to provide a defense should an injury or fatality occur. First of all, it's essential to have good employee training. This means training in the language understood by the employee. It should be training that is responsive to their level of understanding. It's got to be clear, it should be frequent, and it should be continually reinforced. We strongly recommend that either through a safety and health committee or in some other way, an employer include employees in the development of such training programs.
One key point was made, and that was that trained employees will outperform untrained employees every day of the week.
There are other training requirements which are equally serious responsibilities of supervisors. Training in the specific hazards to which exposed. This relates basically to machinery and certain processes. If a person is assigned to operate forklifts, this person must be trained and authorized by the company to safely operate the equipment. This means you must provide safety training to any employee who operates machinery, equipment, or works with potentially hazardous processes, chemicals, or similar work. How about maintenance persons who regularly work with equipment and electricity? They too require safety training. Another training requirement is hazard communications training. Anyone using, storing, handling, or disposing of chemicals or hazardous materials must be provided training. Generally, hazardous communications means enforcing the company's written hazard communications plan, training employees on chemical labeling requirements, and explaining what information is contained on material safety data sheets. Additional training is required on specific chemicals, but this gives you a general idea of your hazard communications training responsibility. Keep in mind, trainers or other personnel may be assigned to the job of providing the training. However, you, the supervisor, remains responsible to see that all your employees receive the training. We understand and realize it's difficult to schedule people away from their regular jobs for training, but it's something that must be done, and as you've heard before, it's your responsibility. Safety training makes extremely good business sense, and in the long run, it benefits the company, the supervisor, and certainly the employee.
And one of the greatest concerns that we have about the supervisor in a work environment is that many times they don't recognize their liabilities in this thing. Even though we've got publications and newspaper articles and see law cases that specifically identify that someone was responsible for a serious injury or death, and some of these people are criminally prosecuted, it still doesn't ring in the minds of most supervisors that they have a legal responsibility to assure that we provide a safe place of employment. The psychology behind the word accident says that when we were children, what was the one way of getting out of being responsible for your actions? If you ran through the house and knocked over the lamp, if you did something that you knew you weren't supposed to do, you just simply said, "Oh, but Mommy, it was an accident." And even your mother before that time would often say, "Oh, that's all right, it was just an accident, don't cry over spilt milk." So we have learned through childhood on into adulthood to accept the word accident as an excuse for our inability to manage or to take responsibility for an action. I've asked supervisors many times if they can just tell me in their plant who they think is going to have the next injury. And usually they can point out 2 or 3 people in their plant that they know are going to be the most likely candidates for the next injury. If I ask them where that injury is going to happen, they usually can point to 1 or 2 jobs that injury most likely will happen. And once we've achieved that level and something does happen, we know that it is not an accident because this manager had the pre-knowledge. He could foresee that the potential for injury was there, yet he decided not to manage it. And deciding not to manage it is a management decision. And we've got to take responsibility for our management decisions. We can't pass the buck by saying it was carelessness, it was an accident, it was the employee's fault. Especially as we as managers can foresee the potential, we have a responsibility to assure that the potential does not occur, if nothing more for the sake of the assets of the corporation.
Okay, we discussed company safety rules, employee training requirements. Now let's review safety rule enforcement. The word accident is misused by everyone, including us from time to time. The actual definition of accident is an unexpected, unplanned, uncontrollable, and undesirable event. If this definition is correct, there's nothing you can do. Uncontrollable means it can't be controlled. The first thing we need to do is remove the word uncontrollable from this definition because accidents can be controlled. If an employee contributes to or causes an accident, action must be taken to ensure the employee is educated in what action he or she did wrong, how to correct the deficiency, and what time frame is allowed in which to correct this behavior or act. It's called safety counseling, but more important, you owe it to your employees to explain how their behavior or acts contributed to an accident or injury. How can employees be expected to correct something unless they know what it is that needs correcting?
Discipline is just having a set of rules. And your job as supervisor is to enforce those rules equally and equitably among all your employees.
It is extremely important that we always follow up our training with the application of the job, enforcement of rules, and assure that the employee is aware of all of the safe procedures in doing the job efficiently.
Safety counseling is extremely important, so let's look at an example. An employee is using a knife to cut open a box. The knife slips off the box and cuts the employee. After medical treatment is provided, the employee should receive a written counseling which explains the act or behavior that contributed to the accident. 1. The employee's free hand was placed in such a manner as to be in the cutting path of the knife. The knife slipped and cut the employee. 2. The corrective action to be taken is never place your free hand or other body parts in the cutting path of the knife. In the event the knife may slip off the material being cut. Number 3. The time frame allowed to correct this deficiency is immediate. The person receiving this written safety counseling may be the best employee you have, great attitude, good worker, loyal, dedicated, and safety conscious. Nothing has changed. A safety counseling is not disciplinary action, it's training. It's telling them what they did wrong and how to correct the situation. It's a written counseling, and we'll explain why it must be written in just a few seconds. Safety counseling is one of the most important responsibilities you have to your employees and to the company. How can employees correct unsafe behavior or unsafe acts if you don't tell them what they did wrong and how to correct it? Should your company be involved in legal action relating to safety, there are basically 4 elements the company must satisfy to prove their safety program is an effective safety program. If one of these elements is missing, you do not have a legal safety program. The first element is the company's written safety policies, procedures, and rules. The next element is training. Are all employees properly trained in safety rules, procedures, hazards, and the responsibilities for safety? This training must be documented in company files. What type of training was conducted? Who conducted the training? When was the training conducted? And what information was provided the employee? If your training isn't properly documented, it's the same as not conducting the training. The third element is safety inspections. Does the company conduct periodic inspections and correct identified safety hazards? That's where supervisor inspections become an important factor. When you identify hazards, are these hazards corrected? Last but not least is the element of enforcing the rules. You prove this element by demonstrating the company does enforce the rules, and you do provide documented counselings for those employees contributing to accidents by their unsafe behavior or unsafe acts. If you do not counsel or document this counseling, you have no proof that the company enforces its written safety rules. If you fail to meet any of these elements, you do not have an effective safety program. Let's go back to element 3, safety inspections. Whether your company has safety committees, safety inspectors, audits, or other staff personnel, the supervisor remains responsible for the safety of the department. Who is better qualified to inspect the department for safety hazards than the supervisor? Employees contribute to safety by reporting hazards to their supervisors, who in turn investigate, and if it is a safety hazard, corrections are made. When do these inspections have to be made? How about daily as you walk through the department? Weekly or monthly inspections could be a part of your schedule. Why not make up a checklist of areas of equipment to inspect and assign employees to inspect the department? This gives them an opportunity to accept safety responsibility and helps you maintain a safe and healthful workplace. You should document these scheduled inspections and the corrections you make. This provides documentation that inspections are conducted and that hazards identified are corrected. Okay, you're meeting all the elements of an effective safety program. Let's look at a few more safety tips to help improve safety and make your job easier. Don't allow incidents, accidents, or near misses to go unreported. Enforce the rule. Report all accidents and injuries to your supervisor. It's a big temptation to not report those accidents and near misses, particularly when there's no property damage or injuries. You should investigate these types of accidents to determine the cause and prevent them from occurring in the future. How about those very minor injuries, the Band-Aid types? All injuries, no matter how small, must be reported. Treatment by a person trained in first aid must be provided, and the accident investigated to determine the cause. First aid treatment is important, especially for the Band-Aid injuries. Many times, a person applies a Band-Aid and goes back to work. That's okay, but if it's not treated properly with minor follow-up treatment, the next day or a couple days later, small minor injuries can become infected, and then you have a lost work time injury. Never allow employees to treat themselves, as this circumvents the reporting requirement and certainly doesn't ensure competent first aid treatment. As we stated, accidents are controllable. This leads us to the supervisor's nightmare of accident investigation. When an accident occurs, it must be investigated. If there's an injury, the first concern is care of the injured person. But after that, investigation is important. Your objective in accident investigation is to determine the facts surrounding the accident. Accident prevention is the goal of accident investigation. Your job is not to place blame, but to gather facts. Talk to witnesses. Take photographs if possible. You must understand that your initial investigation may be the only information that may be obtained about this accident. The information will be used by several other departments, insurance companies, even attorneys. Unless you provide a detailed, thorough accident investigation report, your responsibility as a supervisor isn't being completed. Keep in mind, this accident investigation report you complete may be the only information the company will have, which may not be used for weeks, months, or even years later. It's impossible to recreate the accident scene years later. Your report must be specific and detailed. Name, manufacturer, and serial number of any equipment that's involved. Thorough and detailed is the key to good accident investigation. You're responsible for accident investigation, but there's nothing wrong in asking for assistance. Engineering, maintenance, and other departments can provide technical expertise where required. If you haven't guessed by now, safety responsibility is a big part of your job. Without your leadership, safety cannot exist. If you provide the example, enforce the rules, document counselings, and properly train your employees, safety will become second nature and part of every employee's job. Leadership is the most important part of safety. Supervisors have the legal responsibility for safety, but it really depends on your effort, knowledge, and attitude about safety that makes the program successful. Thank you.